As I was wiping tears from my face, an Indian guy came up to me with a big smile and just said, "Imagine moving to a new country, being completely alone, struggling to find food. And then in the middle of it all, you get a call from back home that your childhood dog had just passed away." That was my first experience in Melaka, Malaysia. It was one of the loneliest moments of my entire life. But 3 years later, I'm back with my mate Daryl to talk about mental health, socialising when moving abroad, and what we've learned along the way. Welcome. G'day, my name's Jack, an Aussie expat living in Malaysia, and this is
Daryl, and I'm from Scotland, and I left the UK last year to start a new life here in Malaysia.
Studies show that 50% of expats experience social isolation and loneliness. Daryl, did you know that?
I did not know that.
Well, it's a shocking statistic, but it's one that I know firsthand. Let's talk about the highs and lows of living abroad, what it's like to be away from friends and family, and offer some tips to you if you're looking to do the same. Sound good?
Sounds awesome. Let's get into it.
Let's go. So Daryl, you've lived overseas in a few countries now. Can you tell us a little bit about that and how you handled the emotional challenges of, moving away from your friends and family?
For me, it was very natural to get out there into the world and just experience life in a new country. Luckily for me, my family and friends did support me with that dream that I had. So moving overseas just made me feel a lot more confident in just having that support behind me. But I also naturally felt like I just wanted to get away from everyone. I don't want that to sound bad, but just being in a new place and, great for self-development. And I just had a great experience overall. Of course, I missed family and friends, but I knew I'd see them again.
Awesome. Yeah, I can relate to that as well. I mean, a big part of it is actually getting away from people, pushing yourself socially to get outside of your comfort zone. Having your friends and family support is very important, but I think it's all about having that positive mindset and sense of adventure. Would you agree with that?
Yes, definitely. You've got to have the positive mindset. You've got to actually want to do it and get out there. It shouldn't be something that you just feel like that you have to do. You've got to take action and you've got to actually really want it.
Yeah. And first you moved to Japan. So you lived in Japan for 9 years and now you're in Malaysia. Do you see any similarities or differences emotionally in the experiences moving to these different countries?
Yes, I mean, as I'm in my 30s now, I was in my early 20s when I moved to Japan. Of course, that was the first country that I actually lived in for a long-term period, and that came with its challenges, without a doubt. But being in my mid-30s now, I feel a lot more experienced from what I've learned in the past from learning overseas and being so far away from the UK where I'm from. I feel a lot more confident and I know how to handle certain situations and certain mindsets.
It's good you have these different experiences, and obviously it's something you develop over time. So if you're in your early 20s, it's going to be scary. I first traveled overseas when I was 18, 19, but now I've grown so much as a person and it's helped me socially and just self-development in so many ways. So you mentioned the word lonely, and I talked to you about this off camera, but let's do it live. You're out your travels, particularly in Japan, I guess when you first moved. Did you ever feel lonely?
So there were certain times when I moved to Japan where I felt like I was lonely because I was living alone, but I overcame that by getting out there, interacting with other people. I hung out with my colleagues a lot at work, so I was working full-time as an English teacher. I worked with other guys from the UK, the USA, who also traveled to Japan by themselves, so we had something in common there, so we actually hung out after work. That helped us a lot, and we also formed relationships with some of the local girls there, and that also helped us not only overcome a sense of loneliness but adapting to the culture in Japan.
Right, so a lot of it is in your control. I mean, if you're going to stay inside and just do your own thing, you can't really expect to not feel lonely. But if you get out there, connect with other people, whether it's other expats or locals, ideally I think you want a mix of both. That's going to make a difference to your experience, whether you're in Asia or all these different countries. Would you agree with that?
100% agree. It's all on yourself. Everyone can feel lonely. That's just natural. It's within ourselves to feel the sense of loneliness because human beings are creatures that actually do benefit by socializing.
Thanks for sharing, Daryl. Personally, I've had experiences of extreme loneliness, and when I first moved to Malaysia, I did think about throwing it all in at one point and going back to Australia, but I'm glad I pushed through and made these connections and made the most of it. And I'll tell you the story of my first time in Melaka in a moment. But first, I want to introduce Daryl and you to something that really helped me when I was first going through those tough times in Malaysia and even recently. recently. My paid partner, BetterHelp, connects you with a therapist no matter where you are in the world. In-person therapy can be intimidating, right? Especially in a country like Malaysia where it is less accessible. But that shouldn't stop you from getting the support you might need. Whether it's dating struggles, loneliness, or just expat life in general, talking to a credentialed therapist can make all the difference.
Jack, that sounds awesome. How does it work?
Yeah, Daryl, it's super simple. You just fill out a quick questionnaire and get matched with a therapist where you can book a session that works for you.
And if you don't vibe with them?
You can switch anytime at no extra cost. BetterHelp carefully makes sure that therapists on the platform are well qualified, and their customer support team is always there for you. With over 7,000 reviews and a 4.5 rating on Trustpilot, BetterHelp is a platform you can trust. And personally, for me, having someone to talk to, even online, made a huge difference. That's why I think things like BetterHelp are so useful, because no matter where you are, you always have someone to lean on. And I want you to know, and I want Daryl to know, that going to therapy is a sign of strength, not weakness. Click the link in the description or go to betterhelp.com/JackAlderton to get 10% off your first month of therapy.
Check it out, guys. Jack, tell us that Melaka story.
Okay, so it was back in May 2022. I'd only been in Malaysia for 2 months at this point. I didn't really have any friends and I was still figuring things out. I started at work, met some colleagues, but I didn't really know anyone that well. One of my colleagues told me I should check out Melaka. So I thought, why not? Sounds like a fun getaway close to KL. But I didn't realize I'd picked the worst possible time. It was Raya week, which is a massive holiday, and it was super busy. Everything was packed, hotel prices were insane, and I ended up booking a place that, well, the Wi-Fi there struggled harder than I did that weekend. Then came the journey. So I went to KL Central to get the bus. I walk in the bus terminal and there was thousands of people. It was unbelievable. I go, how the hell do I get a ticket? The lines are out the door. Tried to buy a ticket in person, but it was hopeless. But I figured out how to do it online and I did make it to the bus. So it was a good bus ride, but by the time I made it to Melaka, I was already tired, stressed out, and a bit confused with what was going on. Now you'd think finding food in Malaysia is easy, but not that day. And we just experienced it, right? We just went out to go get breakfast and all of the cafes were closed. What did you think of that?
Yeah, that was quite bizarre because in KL it's way more convenient, but when you come to these smaller cities in Malaysia, things are just not open in the morning.
Yeah, we were struggling at 10 o'clock. A lot of the cafes weren't open, so you can imagine what I was like being by myself, only 2 months into Malaysia. I was a bit clueless, so I was struggling a bit. So I wandered around, lost and starving, feeling more and more out of place as the time went on. So I was checking my dating apps, swiping Tinder, Bumble, all of them, and let's just say the results were not giving me confidence. It was very different to KL. And that's when it really hit me. I was alone in a new country, a new city, with no real plan, no friends, and no idea what I was doing.
Oh, Jack, that sounds like quite a difficult time you had.
It was, but it got worse. Only then did the lowest point hit. I was walking along Melaka River alone when I got a message from my mum back home in Australia. My childhood dog had just passed away.
Wow, that's a real shame.
Yeah, it was. And I just stood there staring at the water, thinking, what am I even doing here? What's the point of all this? But then life threw one more curveball. I was crying at this point, and as I was wiping tears from my face, an Indian guy came up to me with a big smile and just said, "Selfie?" Mate, I didn't even know what to say. I must have looked like the most miserable, lonely tourist in the world, and this guy just wanted a photo with me. So yeah, I did take the photo with him. We went to a bridge, took the selfie. So it was probably one of the saddest selfies in Malacca.
Oh, what? Do you still have that picture?
No, but he's probably sent it to his friends and family back home. So thankfully, the trip wasn't all that bad. I ended up meeting a female friend who showed me around her home city and made things a lot better for me. But that trip did teach me something very important. Moving abroad isn't just fun and adventure. It's lonely, frustrating, and straight up depressing at times if you're not prepared. Daryl, I know you were keen or even excited to leave the UK, but you must have had some hard periods abroad. Could you tell us your hardest experience living in either Japan or Malaysia?
So one of the most difficult periods from my life abroad was living in Japan during COVID. Now, the thing is, there was no strict lockdown in Japan or in Tokyo where I was living. However, there was a lot of public pressure to act accordingly and to do what was expected by the public during this time, such as not leaving the city of where you reside, and you had to wear a mask everywhere you went. And for me, I even had to wear a mask at work all day and was not allowed to take it off because it would be frowned upon.
So COVID is something we can all relate to. We all had different experiences, but imagine being in a different country during this time and a completely different culture. So how did you get through that tough period?
I was not allowed to actually leave Japan and go back to the UK. So this was early on during the pandemic, round about late 2020, when it was at its worst. So at the time, my partner and I decided to get out of the city so that we could actually travel around Japan. Now, of course, we were very careful in where we went, and we still wore masks, and we wanted to avoid the big crowds. It was still frowned upon to travel to the next prefectures just for a short day trip. If someone said, "Where are you from?" or where did you come from?" or even our car had a Tokyo registration plate, so some people noticed that, and they actually called us out on it. But we weren't out to cause trouble or anything. We were just trying to protect our mental health by getting out of the city, getting some fresh air, seeing a new place, and we just didn't want to think too much about the pandemic at all. Of course, we were still considerate in where we were, and we just, as I said, we wanted to avoid the crowds.
So even though you were stuck in Japan, you could look at it as an opportunity. If we take that mindset of they're not setbacks, they're opportunities, you got to actually explore and see more of Japan that you might not have seen otherwise, and that was good for your mental health.
Yes, certainly. And what the Japanese government actually announced was this go-to campaign where they wanted to boost the economy in Japan. So even though before this happened, my partner and I were traveling around Japan, that was frowned upon. But when the government actually announced this go-to campaign designed to boost the economy of Japan by having domestic tourism, and the government actually subsidized all the hotel costs at 50% off.
Wow, that's awesome. And Malaysia has a similar thing as well. For domestic tourism, you get a tax refund for that as well. So this weekend, we're down here in Melaka, which is about 2 or 3 hours away from KL. So it's a good opportunity to see more of Malaysia and the country we're within. And it's good for your mental health. Even if you can't travel overseas or move abroad, there's certainly a lot more you can see in your own country to experience something new. So I'm from Sydney, Australia, but I've only ever really been along the eastern seaboard. And as we know, Australia is a massive place. Daryl's been to Perth. He's telling me to go to Perth. What do you think of Perth?
Yeah, Perth is an amazing place and definitely a nice city to live in, albeit quite expensive, as a lot of Aussies from Perth will tell you that. But because you've got the beautiful coastline there and you've got amazing food in Perth, it's a very nice place, but you are quite isolated in that part of Australia.
Yeah, so your environment is really important. So overall, you've been to a lot of different places. Would you say moving abroad has been good or bad for your mental health?
Oh, it's been absolutely fantastic for my mental health. I've learned so much about myself and how I can handle certain situations and feelings that I have by living abroad. And just by moving to a different country and starting fresh, can really do wonders for your mental health. It can give you a clean slate and you can just build yourself up to be the best person that you can be.
Yeah, and I've seen your transformation personally in Malaysia. You've only been here for 3, 4, 5 months, but you've changed a lot and you can see your positivity. And would you say Malaysia has been good for you?
Absolutely. I love it here in Malaysia. I think it's a great place to live in this part of the world. You can connect with so many interesting people. Kuala Lumpur, where we live, is what you would call a hub city. There's just so many different nationalities living there, doing the same thing as we are, working there, living there, starting fresh. It's a great place to meet people.
Yeah, it's amazing, and a big contrast to the UK where a lot of it is negativity, right?
Yes, absolutely. The UK is just becoming a very negative place. There are a lot of Brits in the UK that are really interested in getting out of the UK and they don't know how, and they come to me for help. But a lot of people are negative in the UK about people leaving the UK for a better life because they see us as traitors to the nation, where that's just not the case. I don't get teary-eyed under the flag. Okay, I am happy to be British, or I'm from Scotland. I'm happy to be from Scotland, but I am not an ultranationalist in any sense. I am just living the best life for myself, and of course I've got family who miss me and support me back in the UK, and I keep in touch with them. But in my life, I have to look after my mental health, and for me, my mental health was not going well in the UK, and I just knew that I had to get out and I had to take action to help myself.
Awesome. I love that. Take action, and we both like the phrase, go where you're treated best. Let's talk about dating. Obviously, that's a big appeal of moving abroad, meeting new women. So when I moved to Malaysia or traveled to different countries, I used to use a lot of the dating apps to meet friends and go on dates as well. It's a great way to meet people in a new city. Now I'm in a relationship, so I'm interested in single Daryl, how he uses dating apps and how you're using dating to meet connections in a new country.
Yeah, I've certainly had my experience with dating apps, not just here in Malaysia, but in every other country that I've been to. But I find it way more effective to actually attend certain meetup groups so that you can actually speak to people who share the same interests as you. Of course, there will be the opposite sex there. If there's not, then I'm more than happy to make new friends with the males. But for women, when it comes to dating, of course, it needs to be natural for me to actually want to speak to girls. I'm not really interested in just speaking to any girl, but I have had a lot of positive connections with females in where I go, and this is because of my ability to just interact with people. Now, I'm not chasing one thing, of course. I just want to interact, and who knows, maybe it'll turn into something, maybe it won't. So I have established certain connections with females over the last few months on my travels here in Southeast Asia and including Australia, and it's been very positive. It's been a great experience to have these connections, and I'm looking forward to having more in the future.
I love that perspective. It's a mature way to look at it, and it's great you've made these connections while traveling and obviously based in Malaysia. And that's one thing I've really noticed about you, Daryl. When we go out in public, we're vlogging, you love to just talk to people, say hi. It's amazing what happens. You just say hi, and then usually the locals, they're friendly. They talk back, they go in a vlog. It's a really positive experience. So how did you build the confidence to just talk to people like that?
I just don't give a fuck. So for me, when I'm out and about, especially if I'm vlogging and I'm in a fun environment, I'm more than happy to just speak to people. A lot of people even come up to me, as they did the other day with the Chinese woman. But when I'm out and about, my intentions are always just positive and happy, and I'm just wanting to interact with people in fun, positive ways. And you'll see that from some of my vlogs as well. So I think it's important to just interact. Why should we feel so encumbered not to interact with anyone out there? I mean, if you see someone on the street in certain environments and they look at you and they smile at you, you've made the eye contact, why not say hi? A lot of people tend to just stay in their shell and they feel too scared to just interact with people, but I've overcame that.
I love that. Be the change you want to see in the world. A lot of people complain we're always on our phones, texting, not having real connections, but it can just be as simple as you saying hi to the person next to you, making eye contact, smiling, and giving them a compliment, and it could make their day and make a connection for life. You just never know.
And that's something we need as human beings. We are social creatures. We need to interact. Just look at how the chimpanzees and the monkeys out there live their life. We're no different to them. After all, they are our ancestors. We evolved from primates. It is within our DNA to have some kind of social connection out there in the world that we live in. With all the technology that we have, we're always on our phones or our tablets or whatever. It's great for your psychological well-being overall to just have some kind of positive interaction with people out there. And from my experience here in Malaysia, there are plenty of people, more than enough people out there that are more than happy to have some kind of positive interaction, some kind of little conversation. And for me, I love just collecting information from people, and I love getting different perspectives. It helps me learn a lot about how other people live their life, and it gives me ideas on how I can incorporate that into my life.
Yeah, amazing. I love that. So you're learning from them, they're learning from you. And another tip I'll give you, I'm sure Daryl agrees, is start vlogging, pull out a camera, start filming things. People see you doing that, people see the positive energy, they want to be part of it as well. So would you say vlogging has changed the game socially for you?
Absolutely. It gives you a chance to expose what you're doing with your life. And now, for me on my channel, I'm not trying to show off. I'm not trying to be the big man or anything like that. My channel is simply a visual journal for myself, but I thought, why not make it public? Why not share this with everyone to see? Maybe they'll find it inspiring. If they do, that's fantastic, because part of my mission is to just inspire people to get out there, better themselves by being more confident out there in the world, go and live in a different country and just see how it goes. I'm trying to tell people, look, don't be scared, go for it and don't look back.
Yeah, I agree. So this video, we're sharing our tough times, but we're also showing how we got through it and how we're thriving now and all the positive things you can do and the benefits it has to your mental health and your well-being. We talked about vlogging and YouTube, but social media in general can be a great way to connect with people online. So you first messaged me on Instagram, and if I hadn't have replied to your DM, we wouldn't have met, we wouldn't have done our first interview, and we wouldn't be friends today. So how do you think social media can be used as a tool in addition to in-person connections?
It's certainly a great tool to use. I mean, social media media, you may hear that social media is bad for you. Well, it's not. Social media is a tool for you to use. Now, depending on how you use it, it may benefit you, it may destroy you. But for me, I've learned how to use social media to my advantage, and I contacted Jack via Instagram back in November. I just reached out to him and asked him if he's interested in doing an interview for my channel, because I already followed Jack before reaching out to him on his YouTube channel. I already watched his content. I was inspired by Jack, actually. So I came to him and said, hey, let's do an interview, let's meet up. And we did. And now we've just became amazing friends.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to hear that. And, people come up to me on the street, people recognize me now, Daryl too. And it's so rewarding to see that people love your videos and they get value from it. And most importantly, it inspires them. You can really change someone's life.
Absolutely. Why not go for it? You have the chance there, you have the tools. Use them. So Jack, do you have any tips to make social connections or new friends in Malaysia?
Yeah, of course. So I made a lot of connections through work, through colleagues. So if you're able to work in a new country, take advantage of the network you have at your workplace. You're going to spend most of your day there. My workplace also has a lot of after work events like badminton, other social events, sporting. They're taking up paddle and tennis lessons as well. I also did a yoga session at the office the other night, which was awesome. So you get out of your comfort zone. You're meeting people who are also interested in the same thing. I think that's the key thing as well. When you go to these events, you go to these meetups, you go to a run club. I started running in the park. That was another story I had. So I went running in KLCC Park. I do that once a week in the morning. I had Strava Pro enabled for the month, and it shows you who else did the same route that morning. So I came across another guy who'd also been running with me at the same time. I was able to find his Instagram from the Strava, and then I messaged him there, and we had a connection through that as well. So there's different ways you can meet people, but the key is to get out there, get outside your comfort zone, and actually do something with your life. If you just sit inside and you don't do anything, what do you expect? Okay, last and final question for you. What advice would you give to someone moving abroad in general?
Definitely do your research before you actually take action and move abroad. I'm not saying that you should think too much about where to go, but for me, in my experience, I did a lot of research before I moved to Malaysia and before I moved to Japan, and that consisted of watching lots of YouTube videos of people who were already doing it, reading articles on websites about what the culture is like in Japan and what you should do and what you should not do in Japan. Also learning about the laws of the country, immigration, what kinds of visas there are, learn about the economy and what kinds of opportunities there are in that country. So this is something coming from my own personal thoughts. A lot of people like to just go for it and see what happens, but I like to do my due diligence on places before I actually visit them. Are they right for me? You can really only know that once you get there and try it, but it certainly benefits you actually gathering a lot of intel before you move to that country.
Yeah, so do your research, watch more of our videos to get more insights, but most importantly, after you've done that, take action. You never know what's going to happen. Have a positive mindset. If there's one thing we want you to take from this, is that moving abroad can be an adventure, but it can also be a challenge. If you're feeling lost, know that you're not the only one. There's others just like you out there. Send us a message, reach out, connect. You never know what could happen. So would we do it all again?
Absolutely.
Great to talk to you again, Daryl.
Thanks, Jack. Good to be here.
Subscribe for more videos about my life in Asia, and we'll see you in the next one.